So xenophobia was very much involved, really, when we look at the establishment of America and how America came about.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 23 cable stations from Burlington, Vermont, that's our newest station, down to New York City. And of course on the internet at thestruggle.org and on YouTube. Today we feature a CIA protest of the Keystone XL pipeline. CIA involved with environmental politics? Of course, CIA, Cowboys, and Indian alliance. It's real. Native Americans and farmers and ranchers banding together to campaign against a pipeline that will ruin their family lands, as well as, in the words of climate scientist James Hansen, create game over for the climate. For nearly a week, the CIA filled part of the National Mall in D.C. with teepees and tents and horses. Then from the Connecticut Civil Liberties Conference, portions of a talk about Islamophobia by Hartford Imam Karim. We close on a lighter note with another satirical romp by the channel Adventures in Apartheid, a piece called Fields of Apartheid. We begin on April 26th in Washington, D.C. at a demonstration called Reject and Protect. First, a rally on the National Mall, then a march to present a hand-painted protest teepee to the national government, and then musical entertainment once again on the mall.
And my name means Thunder Woman. My mom always says she named me properly because I've used my voice and I've used my thunder. I want to thank everyone for coming out and supporting this really great initiative. Because I do it for the future generations. I do it for my children and the children of my brothers and sisters, and the ones that stand behind me, Crystal Lehman from the Beaver Lake Cree Nation, and my cousin Gitz Crazy Boy from the Athabasca Chippewan First Nation. Because we are from the front lines of the oil that's coming through these pipelines. We are the ones that are bearing some of the worst impacts of these projects that are out of control, and they are destroying the land, the culture, and the people that live beside these extraction zones. And enough is enough. I'm so glad to see a gathering like this, the Cowboy Indian Alliance. It shows the strengths and the foundations of this country. When the European settlers came here, they made agreements with the First Nations and the Native Americans. These agreements were called treaties. We are all beneficiaries of these treaties, every single one of us standing here today. It's time for President Obama and Prime Minister Harper to start honoring the foundations of this country and honoring those treaties. Every landowner, every Native American, we have treaty rights, and it's time for us to assert them and take back our roles as caretakers and stewards of this land. We can no longer afford to be economic hostages in the race to industrialize Mother Earth for her resources. In northern Alberta, where our communities are from, our communities are seeing the poisoning of our water systems, the destructions of our landscapes and our traditional treaty territories. We are seeing the annihilation of our animals and our culture. We can no longer stand idly by and allow this to happen. My nation, the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, is taking all means necessary to protect our treaty territory. We are suing Shell Oil. We are suing the federal government. And we will challenge any application that comes into our traditional territory. My sister, Crystal Lehman, her nation is taking the government to court for over 17,000 infractions of treaty rights in her territory. Obama needs to say no, because if this pipeline goes through, it spells the green light to go ahead to continue annihilating our people and our culture. We need to not just stop this pipeline, but every pipeline. We need to send a message that enough is enough, and we need to start taking care of Mother Earth and our people and the future generations. Masi Cho.
So this past week, we've been painting this beautiful teepee cover here. How's it look? A part of this journey and a part of the organization of this event is that there were promises made. Obama made promises to the indigenous peoples of this land. And some of those tribes took him in and they actually acknowledged him and they gave him a name. He was given a Crow name. He was also given a Lakota name. His Lakota name is Oyate Owichakie Wichasha, the man who helps the people. And so this teepee, we're gonna take this teepee. This has been painted by all the different guests that have come in. It's designed by this man that's standing next to me. His name is Steve Tamayo, a wonderful Lakota artist. We're gonna bring this teepee and we're gonna give it to the Smithsonian, who's gonna take it. And the purpose of this teepee is to remind Obama that we gave you an Indian name. We took you in. Your name is He Who Helps the People, so help us. Remember your promises. Remember what you stand for. And we acknowledged you. You're one of us. Join us. So I'm going to ask Steve here to say a few words about the significance of this teepee lodge. So give a round of applause for Steve.
I am a member of the Sichangu Lakota people from Rosebud, South Dakota. My family comes from a little beautiful place called Milks Camp. And so this was a place where my mother was raised. And so I've been living my life in Omaha on the res, back and forth. And so what I do is I explain symbolism. When you travel anywhere in the four directions, symbolism exists everywhere, with every culture, every society. We have clans, we have tribes, we have all these different bands that exist throughout the world. It's just when the people made their ways to the United States, they forgot this relationship. And so this Tipestala, that's how we call it, it's a pointy dwelling in which we live in. That's what it translates into. That's what we call Tipestala. And so on this, I was, the teepee isn't perfect, but nothing's perfect. This is how life is. And so I had over 60 people painting on this teepee of all different races, of all different nationalities. And so it was a wonderful experience. So I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to Washington, D.C. to take part in this. There are 4 things that are truly sacred to indigenous people. It's the water, it's the land, because of the medicinal edible ingredients that are created by the Creator. And also, we acknowledge our Wakanyajas. This is the next generation. This is our little babies. I had Wizipan's son come up, and that's his nape, that's his hand, that's on these horses that you see behind me. And so I was waiting and waiting for a little Indian boy to come over. And so he appeared. And so it was a wonderful time because all the horses were painted. On this, I acknowledge the 13 moons. That's the scales that you see in this, or the turtle. And so this is the lunar cycle that exists. Within the lunar cycle throughout the year, we acknowledge the 28 days, but this is a cleansing for our women. And this is why I incorporated the turtle. It's the longevity of its life. It's a protector of the amulets that exists for our wiyans, our women. And so the last thing that we have that is truly sacred to us is our voice. It's our prayers, it's our songs, it's how we communicate with each other. And this is truly sacred. And so I hope President Obama hears our prayers. As you look up into the skies, you see Pleiades. It's the Big Dipper. It's in the formation that exists right now in this season because it's dumping the water back onto the earth. It's replenishing the earth. That's why this lodge was created in this manner. As you look in front of me, this is the door. It's painted red because the red to us can either give life or take life. And so the alliance that has been created is our Cowboys and Indians. It's everything that exists, from the four-legged to the winged relatives, and this is the path that goes right down the middle of them. And so this is our lodge. I want to thank all the volunteers who helped me paint this. It was an amazing experience, and Pilami Apolo.
Thanks, Steve. And I also want to acknowledge, before the teepee was painted, we had it on a spiritual camp in Nebraska where the pipeline would be threatening. It's that same path is also on the Ponca Trail of Tears, where many Ponca lost their lives, including the white buffalo girl who was buried by her parents. Her parents, the agents, kept on forcing the tribes to move forward, and so the farmers and ranchers of Neely, Nebraska created a memorial for the white buffalo girl, and this pipeline threatens that route where she died. In this teepee canvas, before it was painted, was on that route. And then again, when we did the largest crop art ever, I hope you saw it, of the cowboy and Indian, this teepee was also brought out in the middle of a blizzard and was blessed with farmers, ranchers, and tribes from all along the route, making sure that President Obama felt our presence. And so I just wanted to make sure folks knew that part of the history. We have one more speaker, Dallas.
Thank you. There's a young man here. He's a young man. He's a musician. I don't know if some of you have heard of him. He's going to come up and share a few words. His name is Neil Young.
Thank you so much. We stand with you. We are with you. We're with the farmers. We're with the ranchers. We're with the Indians in the USA. We are with the First Nations people of Canada. We say, honor the treaties. Honor our agreements. Honor your word. Keep your word. My mother always said to me, keep your word and clean up your mess, Neil. So this is what we want the government of Canada to do. Keep your word. Don't let this happen. It's on First Nations land. They have the right to stop it. Let them speak. Don't bowl over them like they weren't there, because they are there, and they will be held to pay. There's an ancient story about a black snake that comes and threatens the First Nations people across North America, and this is it. It stretches from the tar sands of Alberta to the Gulf of Mexico, and it carries this this poison that is going to do incredible damage to Mother Earth. 3 times as much CO2 in this oil as any other oil on the planet. It turns a Toyota Celica into a Chevy Suburban if you burn gasoline in that. That's what happens. And this is what's going down this pipeline. For who? For what? It's not for you. It's not for us. It goes to a tax-free zone in Texas so that it can be shipped to Asia or somewhere else in the world and used in automobiles to pollute. And we can't have any more pollution. We need the CO2 to stop. That's why I stand with my friends. They are the people of the earth. They are the caretakers of the earth. We love the earth. We don't want to see this happen. Our grandchildren will be trying so hard to dig themselves out of the hole that we're digging right now just to make a few bucks over the last few years of the fossil fuel age. We need to end the fossil fuel age and move into something better. So I say to President Obama, this is your defining moment in the history of the world. Make your statement and make a statement that's good for all time. It's a change. The change is coming. Why not give it a push? Why not stand up and put America on the right side of history?
I'm holding back my applause for Neil Young just a bit. He's fine on the pipeline issue, but he doesn't get it on Palestine-Israel. He's actually planning to go to Israel to entertain. I caught up with Neil Young at the rally and spoke to him for under a minute, and I asked him if he knew that the BDS Palestinian effort was asking him to stay away from Israel. He seemed to bristle, and he said he did know about it, but then he answered that all nations were oppressed and that we shouldn't prejudge him. Clearly, he is not getting it. To help with his education, just to do an internet search for the words Neil Young, apartheid, and Israel.
It's a stick. It's crooked. This is real. This is authentic. And it's such an honor to play this, but those trees have life, and they have meanings and messages, and so I'm going to play something on this flute, and thank you again.
We don't want no pipeline drama. Hey!
Here's what I need y'all to do. When the beat comes in, everyone put one fist in the air. Let's go. Come on. All red, everything. Everything's red. Can I get the music down in the monitors a little bit? Red. Yeah. I want you to listen to the words and rock with me. First off, I send love to Neil Young for giving us hope in this life. Quote the Sioux way, all red, everything red, nation rising, revising our story, they're televising. Child of the plains, I see 2020. Poverty porn, TV pimp us for money. Tell Diane Sawyer, I am a warrior. Give me your camera, send pound to your lawyer. Free all my people, get them out of prison. Take them to Sundance, show them how we're living. Give youth an outlet, disadvantaged prodigies. Feed these politicians all our commodities. Put them on the rest from the day they're born. They won't survive cause the cancer is airborne. Put them in.
Now to Imam Kashif Abdul Karim, who spoke earlier this year at a Connecticut conference called One Nation Under Surveillance.
With God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, Assalamu alaikum, which means may the peace and blessings of Almighty God be upon all of you. My name, as he mentioned earlier, is Imam Kashif Abdul Karim, the resident Imam of Muhammad Islamic Center of Greater Hartford, and I have the opportunity of coming here today to talk to you about the origins of Islamophobia. The origins of Islamophobia. How has these things of Islamophobia impacted and come forth from out of this great country we call America? Really, when we talk about Islamophobia, we really need to begin with talking about xenophobia. Xenophobia is a term that, when it is explained throughout the dictionary, it is said to be an intense fear or dislike of foreign people, their customs and cultures, or foreign ideas and things. It's an intense fear or dislike of foreign people. Now, we're not talking about foreign people because they come from another land, etc. We're talking about having a dislike or intense fear because people are different, and particularly their customs and their cultures are different, or they have foreign ideas in the way that they see things. Really, when we look at people's customs and ideas, we understand that their religion often plays a strong role in understanding people's customs and cultures. So xenophobia was very much involved, really, when we look at the establishment of America and how America came about. Xenophobia, the fear of people being different. We know that the founding fathers, many of them, when they came to America from out of England, they came here escaping religious persecution. Many of them from out of the UK came here as Puritans, trying to escape the persecution they were facing in England and of course, in the United Kingdom. They arrived here in great numbers in the 1600s, and they began to exemplify the freedom of practicing the Puritan faith as they understood it, that they could not practice in England. They were being persecuted, they were being killed, they were being tortured and all kinds of things, and they came to America really seeking some of those religious freedoms. Many religious groups that we know, such as the Quakers and the Puritans, were the ones who formed the original 13 colonies on the basis of their religious beliefs. Although the original plan was for them to escape religious persecution where they were from, they were actually, some of them, practicing religious persecution when they came here themselves. One example of the persecution would be with the Puritans themselves. The Puritans wanted everyone to worship in a Puritan way, in a Puritan form. Not so much that they wanted to just have them worship that way, but they wanted to have the power to be able to control the colonies as they was being developed and growing. So they wanted people to be part of the Puritan way so that they could have the strength and the strongholds of the colonies themselves. The Puritans, however, felt that anyone who was not conforming to their belief system was a threat, were a threat. And they quite often would find these nonconformists, they would banish them, whip them, and even imprison them for not conforming to the way of the early Puritans that was here, because people were thinking in different ways. Eventually, we know that the persecution came to an end of these groups, and other groups of religious denominations began to arise within the early colonies. We know that one of the groups that was beaten and tortured quite often was the Anglicans. The Anglicans were the first group among the Puritans that actually were being persecuted and beat among those individuals. However, the Anglicans were one of the first groups to be able to rise up in the early colonies to establish themselves. Then we saw the rise of the Baptists becoming part of many of the majority of the colonies. Then we saw a rise of the Roman Catholics in some of the states that were close to Maryland. Then we saw German religions begin to surface in a few of the colonies. We saw the Lutherans begin to rise up, especially in Pennsylvania, among the German communities like we know of Germantown. And we also saw the rise of the Presbyterians as they began to appear also in Massachusetts. So we began to see that the Anglicans, the Baptists, the Catholics, the Germans, the Lutherans, the Presbyterians were all coming together now, expressing their diversity within inside of the country. However, although they were becoming a religiously diverse community, they were, however, still all predominantly Christian. They were all predominantly Christian, but they were also, at one time, considered heretics of one another, didn't get along. The Baptists didn't get along with the Anglicans, they didn't get along with the Roman Catholics, the Lutherans, the Presbyterians. They continued to be able to disagree with each other, and they would punish each other in different types of ways. But eventually they began to come together and see themselves all as Christians and recognize their diversity together as one people. Soon people from all over the world who wanted the freedom to practice their religion began to come to America, and we began to see people immigrating to America for religious freedom. Some of the first immigrants to come to America in this particular way, of course, we understand was the Scotch-Irish, who were among the first people to come to America, again, to be able to practice religion, to practice their way of life. But again, they were considered different at that particular time. They were considered different. And when they were considered different, xenophobia caused them, of course, to be persecuted because they was different. Each group that arrived in America, each group that came to America was considered a heretic. They was considered the oddball, the one that was considered strange, and they were persecuted in that type of way. And we need to realize that although these groups, although they were different in their practices, each one of them considered each other to be heretics or to be different in different ways at that particular time. And then there were groups that would begin to come into America that were very different from the Christian values that they were used to. The Jews arrived into America, especially in great numbers between 1881 and 1924. And of course, we know this was the time period when the Eastern European immigration period was taking place, and then of course after the Holocaust. We should also know that the Jewish community was already in the early colonies as early as 1654. But yet they was considered different, they was considered heretics, and they was being punished, again, by the people who were Christians in the big picture, looking at the people who were Jews who were worshiping in a very different type of way. We saw this persecution happen to them, and we see again that people were coming to America to escape religious persecution, as we saw that was being prominent among the Jews. Meanwhile, at the same time, we saw other groups coming into America. We began to see the Jews coming into America, the Irish people, we began to see the Poles, and we began to see the Italians. They began coming into America, and they also began to face xenophobic views that were showing periods of exclusion, and that the society was creating structured laws to discriminate against them in the American society. At the same time, we know that there was other groups in America who were facing racially and ethnically structured institutions, which were also taking place in America, such as slavery, the Indian Wars, the Native American reservation, segregation, residential schools, and the internment camps that was taking place also in America. The Chinese were also being discriminated against purely because they were Buddhists. They were different in the way that they were looking at things and their cultural values, etc. They were also being discriminated against in America as a new people. The basic ideas of the Founding Fathers regarding the freedom of religion seem to be only present or important to a certain group of people, and the idea of the Founding Fathers really was not being manifest. So, as we begin to talk about Islamophobia, we have to realize it is directly connected to xenophobia, which has always been present in America. Xenophobia and Islamophobia, when you look at it, they all have their origins in one another, the hatred of people purely because they are different. But what makes Islamophobia different in terms of it? Well, let us back up for a short second. The civil rights struggle for African Americans in the fall of apartheid in South Africa was successful because of a new tool in America that was called the television. The oppression that was being committed in America and South Africa could be put on the world stage. America was seen as a land of hypocrisy. The world was beginning to get smaller, and people did not just read about the racist oppression and brutal acts here, but they could see it with their own eyes. The lynching and death was terrifying, which forced good people finally to stand up and see things for themselves. The media played a strong role in creating change as far as Africa. So today, there is also a new tool that is present in America that was not present during those particular times. Of course, that is the internet. The internet can serve as a powerful resource, as we see now, how it has ignited the Arab Spring and these particular things. After 9/11, we saw the big growth of organizations such as Facebook, etc. Soon tweeting and Instagram would follow. Television newspapers would then be replaced, and then we would see groups that would be developed, such as Jihad Watch, Bare Naked Islam, the United States Justice Foundation, Gold is Money, Sharia Awareness Action Networks, etc. All of these groups would develop, and there would be many, many other groups that would develop that would be designed and given funding, etc., and financing to develop this vast, great Islamophobic period that has existed in America. Mudge and I went to Washington to address this issue regarding the hate reform bill that was introduced by Hakeem Jeffries of New York to address the growth of this hate through the World Wide Web. This current bill is antiquated. It has to be put to a stop. We have to put an end to it, and we obviously need to create a change. We need to realize that we are today writing our history in the present. We are writing our history in the present. Just as we are shamed by the things that we see in our past, we look back at slavery, look back at the Christian persecution, the persecution of all of our people, the Chinese, Japanese, etc. We're writing our history in the present, and we have to see how are we going to look at ourselves and what we are doing right now during this particular time. Thank you.
Before we present our last piece, I'd like to urge you to go to our website, click on videos, and see the viral video about the cold-blooded murder of a Palestinian youth on May 15th. Now to a lighter piece, a satire called Fields of Apartheid.
Need to escape the crush of modern life? Looking for peace of mind? Love a good tomato? Well, come to Israel and enjoy our fields of apartheid. Endless natural bounty and always more, because if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, you can take land away from those who are not. That's what apartheid is all about. In Israel, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, you have all the water you need. Civil courts, civil rights, an army to protect you, modern highways to connect you. For those who are not of the correct ethnic religious category, water rationing, uprooted olive trees, checkpoints, a wall between them and their orchards, an army to attack them, military courts, prison without charge of trial, food insecurity, in Gaza special food calorie restrictions. Some of them still have their own fields, for the time being at least, but if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, we're always making more room for you. We've confiscated 750,000 acres of land from them for you, and we're draining the land of milk and honey to make apartheid bloom for you, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category. In Israel, apartheid practically grows on trees, so enjoy your stay in the land of ethnic privilege, and wherever you are, keep apartheid in business by buying Israeli produce. A rich, juicy Israeli strawberry. Apartheid you can taste.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.